So good to see everyone. Tonight we'll be talking about chapter communicators, what their roles are, and how we can be better in our role. So my name is Curran. I'm one of the Founder Circle speakers. I'm an alumni from the Beta Omicron chapter at Arizona State University.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paula Kaiser. I am currently the chair of the Membership and Chapter Support Committee for this biennium. And then the previous biennium, I served as the chair of the Curriculum Committee. I am a life member from the Iota Lambda chapter at the University of Mount Union, and I see lots of NCD friends. So very excited to see you all for all the faces that I know, and I'm excited for a great call tonight. And I'm also very jealous of everyone who's still in band camp because I wish I could go back to band camp. So enjoy that time.
I'm jealous of that as well, and also go NCD. My name is Jack Gornick. I am a Founder Circle speaker, an alum from Alpha Zeta at Indiana University, and now living in Chicago. A few years graduated. Sad I can't be at band camp. All right, good to
Cool.
see all of you.
Cool. I'm also sad that I can't be at band camp, but I know right after this I help high school marching band, so I'm enjoying the AC while I have it. So I miss being in band camp. Not looking forward to going outside and helping with band camp. But anyway, on to our agenda. So tonight we're going to be talking about communication. What is communication? What positions are we referring to when we talk about communicators? How can we get better? How can we continue to strive for the highest? And then we'll wrap it up with some of our fraternity resources to make sure that you have all the tools at your disposal to be the best communicators that you can be. So if you haven't already, I'd love to see in the chat what positions you guys are coming into. I know the communicators is such a broad term, and we left it pretty broad for all of you. So I'm curious to see who we have here, whether it's secretary, alumni relations officers. We just want to see kind of everything coming in tonight. And while you do that, I'll dive into what is communication. So at its core, communication is how we create and share meaning with the people around us. It's how we exchange ideas, information, thoughts, and our feelings. And that can be done in a variety of ways, including verbal, visual, and vocal cues. So I don't want to turn this into like a public speaking class or anything like that, but I do want to dive into a few of these just to kind of give us all a starting spot for the conversation. The verbal cues refer to the actual words I'm saying. Each word is the foundation of the meaning that we're sharing between us right now. And how hard would this conversation be if I came in and it's called, I did my entire portion in Spanish, and then Paula came in her entire portion in French, and then Jack did his entire portion in Italian? We'd be doing our best to express meaning, but a lot will be lost quite literally in translation. Some of us might get every word, some of us, like me, probably wouldn't get any of it, and that leads to ineffective communication. Next, we have our vocal component. How I speak, not just the words I say, but everything around it. The tone, the volume, the pacing, the pauses, all of that is important to the meaning being shared. So I could give the same info just like this. Or I can give it really fast, just like this. Or like this. And each one, I'm using very similar words, but it's bringing across different emotion, different feel, and a different meaning. So that's important to keep in mind kind of in the verbal communication. Lastly, we have our visual cues. These are areas like eye contact. And this is kind of hard to do on Zoom to illustrate. If we were in person, it'd be much easier. But imagine if I'm talking like this, where right now I'm staring at the screen that I have in front of me, or I'm staring over here at some of the notes that I took. You'd feel like I'm not really having a conversation with you. I'm having a conversation with my fan right over there. Instead, I'm hoping to talk at you, so we're having a conversation. We're as engaged as we can be with me looking at the camera, instead of me talking in your general direction or not even in that way. And that's something that whether you're the speaker or the person in the audience, we can kind of tell who's paying attention, who's on their phone, who's asleep, who's not even in the room, just kind of based on these visual cues. So with all that, those are kind of three portions of communication that we want to impart on you all, which may be relevant to your role, maybe not, but at least now we're kind of having the same idea of what communication is. So with all that, it's important to know that clarity for the message should be the messenger's responsibility. But quite honestly, it should be your responsibility, whether you're the messenger or the person receiving the message. For example, if you're giving a message, something to be clear would be, hey, our next chapter meeting is Monday, August 25th at 7:30 p.m. in this building in room 302. Or jotting down accurate meeting minutes if you're a recording secretary. It's not just saying, hey, don't forget we have a chapter meeting, providing no additional context. And if you're the person receiving the communication, you should also focus on ensuring you understand the point trying to be conveyed. Be sure you're giving feedback. If you understand, give little nods. You don't have to be nodding the whole time like this, but every now and then just let us know that you're understanding what we're saying and we're not speaking in another language almost. And if you're the person, also ask questions. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end of this, and feel free to throw some questions in the chat. Our team will do a great job of answering them. But that helps make sure we have a shared connection, that I'm not just sending information at you that I think makes sense and it's just falling on deaf ears or not being interpreted in the way that I hope. So there are a lot of barriers to communication, particularly in your role. And the biggest one I would say is simply gaining and getting attention. As college students, I know we all have a lot on our plates. You have your classes, rehearsals, band camp, as we were talking about, probably the first week of classes, if not this week, next week. You have rehearsals, jobs, family obligations, and the list kind of goes on and on. And every member of your chapter or every alumni you're communicating to, or whatever the communication goes, is going to have those same obstacles fighting for their time. And that leads to a lot of distractions and competing priorities for the people you're trying to communicate to. So your job as a communicator at the end of the day is to cut through as much of that noise as possible and make it so your brothers know, or at least can easily find out, what's expected of them. And on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how we can do that, how we can have clear and concise communication. And that comes with the 7 C's of communication. So these are 7 different C-related words that are great to keep in mind as you're focusing on communication. So I'm going to touch on a few of them to really go in depth, but I encourage you to just kind of take a look through all of them and think why they may matter. So clarity is the first one I want to touch on. So on the last slide, I talked a little bit about the distractions in our lives, everything going on and pulling us away from whether it's Kappa Kappa Psi, our lives, our chapters, what's kind of pulling us in different directions. So you want to be sure you're keeping your expectations clear for your chapter clear and easily able to be understood. So think things like maybe adding your information to a Google Drive, having a Google Calendar with up-to-date information. That way people don't have to go 6 or 7 meeting minutes back and hope they can find the right information. It's just right there ready for them to find. Correctness and completeness are the next 2 I want to touch on. So be sure the information in these sources like the Google Drive, the Google Calendar are up to date. We don't want our Google Drive to say, for example, hey, first degree starts at 7:30 p.m. while our meeting minutes say, actually, first degree starts at 8 p.m. Half the chapter is going to show up at 8 p.m., half is going to show up at 7 p.m., and you guys are going to have chaos. So be sure anytime information is sent out, you're double checking, triple checking that it's complete and that it's correct and that it matches the other information that's already been put out. Last thing for this slide is conciseness. You don't need to spend 10 minutes on a point or write a 10-paragraph sentence when only one will do the job. So on the next slide, we have our keys to success. So first thing is be curious and listen closely. And this can kind of be different for every position. At the end of the day, try things and see what works. You might find that your chapter really loves Google Calendar. You might find that some people don't know how to open Google Calendar and they may prefer to stick to the meeting minutes. You know your chapter's culture better than us speaking at you. So at the end of the day, find what works and stick with it. Now you may have to try 5 or 6 different routes, and what worked last year might not work well this year. And that's totally okay. We just encourage you to try a couple different options, see what works, and go from there. Next, I'd encourage you to communicate frequently. So as leaders, as communicators, we swim in Kappa Kappa Psi knowledge and information. If someone were to ask us, hey, what day is third degree going to be? You probably know it already if it's been set by your chapter. Hey, what day does band camp start? You guys have been looking forward to it probably for 3 months. You know the exact date you're going to be moving into your dorms and all that stuff. But some of the members who aren't as in those leadership positions might not know them. So it's important that you communicate frequently so that you don't assume because I know something everybody else does. Assume that even though you know something, assume that nobody else knows any of that. The more frequently you can do that and the more frequently you communicate, the more successful you will be in your role. I'd also consider the time and place for your communication. And the trick question for this is the earlier the better and the more frequently the better. Assuming you're not kind of spamming people with information. The more you can give people information about service projects, for example, the more likely they are to attend. If I use this example on a call earlier this week, that if Kristen said, hey, if she told us presenters, the presentation is happening, hey, I'm running a presentation tonight, can you be there? one or two of us might have been there. It's entirely possible, but it's likely that we're not going to be as prepared as we were. We're not going to know what's happening. We're probably going to have to leave early. Same thing with your chapter events. But if Kristen said, hey, we have this service project, this presentation a month from now, it gives people the time to set up their schedules, get their PTO, work their schedule around, maybe move their class projects around so they can be there at that event. The last thing is figure out the best way to give feedback and give constructive feedback to your chapter. One method is compliment sandwiches. One method that I've seen is give positive feedback often so that people know what's working well. And so that you kind of build up that rapport when giving negative feedback. If the first time I give you feedback is, hey, you're doing this thing wrong, it's going to kind of hurt more than if I've been affirming some of the areas that you've done well in the past. So I'd encourage you to just continue to give feedback and find what works for your chapter. So I know I've thrown a lot at you guys. Does anybody have any thoughts on anything we've talked about so far, or the 7 C's that work really well for their chapters? Great, no worries. So last thing in this section before we kind of transition gears a little bit is the Crown Pro goals. So this is something that we've been wanting to highlight on all of our calls so far. And these are things that kind of will help your chapter reach the next level. One of the questions I get a lot on these calls that I've seen, and I'm sure the other presenters have as well, the questions kind of fall into, hey, our chapter doesn't know what to do. We have this new position, new role. We don't know what we want to do to get better. Or it's chapters saying, hey, we're doing things really well. What can we do to kind of go to show off and show at our next level that we are doing these great things? And the Crown Pro goals is the Nationals way of showing that information. So we have 15 different goals that you can look at. Some of them are chapter operations goals, some of them are national goals, and some of them are Strive for 5 goals. And these are things that we encourage your chapter to do if you're not already doing. You might find that, oh, your chapter is pretty good at submitting your curriculum calendar on time. That's great. Or you may find that some of them are less, aren't being done as commonly by your chapter. Maybe you guys don't send a budget to your district council. These are ways you can help learn, grow, and become better as a chapter and meet kind of our best practices as an organization. Now, one thing I'm going to touch on is that strive for the highest it means progress, not perfection. We're not requiring you to hit all 15 of these goals. And if you don't, you're a terrible chapter. No, we want you to even just be one goal further than you were last year. And chapters that can complete 10 of these 15 goals can be recognized as a Crown Pearl chapter. What this means is it just shows that your dedication to growing and striving for the highest. So next we have the communicators. So I know some of you guys threw in the chat what your specific positions are, and hopefully we can answer some of your specific questions for your individual role. So first up, we have the secretary, the chapter secretary. So some chapters, the chapter secretary is one person. Sometimes it splits up into 2 roles, and sometimes it's split kind of in a variety of other positions. So first we have the recording secretary. Recording secretaries are usually responsible for taking minutes and then maintaining the chapter roster. We have a corresponding secretary who might manage chapter calendar and coordinate events, and maybe even reach out to other districts and chapters. And we have a handy minutes template here that you can scan for a QR code if you want to kind of have a helpful template to go off of. I see some phones coming out, so I'll give you guys a couple seconds. And I believe you can also find this in the chapter resource folder that we'll talk about a little bit later. Cool. On to the next slide. We have our Alumni Relations Officer. So the ARO helps connect past and present members of your chapter. So these develop relations with your chapter alumni. Maybe you reach out to the local area alumni association if you have one for your local chapter, and they maintain the alumni roster. These roles are responsible for kind of communicating and sending information to alumni like all of us giving this presentation. So we thank you for the information you give. One thing I'd say with the Alumni Relations Officer, I'd encourage you to communicate significantly earlier than you think you need to, especially when reaching out to graduates and more distant alumni. When you're an active, you're kind of around campus, you have more opportunities to get involved. As an alumni, there are a lot of alumni like some of us who are here who love to help out. We just need to know about it further in advance. If you say, hey, can you be at the band field by 5 p.m. to help us move a podium? The answer is probably going to be no. If you say, hey, 3 weeks from now, we need some help moving the podium, you're going to have much better turnout than if you do short term. So for that one, I highly encourage you, be early and thinking in advance of how you can get alumni involved. For historian, this role helps you connect to the history. So this helps preserve the history of the chapter and document new history. This might be digitizing historical documents, making them PDFs instead of old pieces of paper that are falling apart. Sharing history of your chapter via social media, and helping kind of celebrate your history and share it with the active brothers. Lastly, we have all officers. So all officers communication is important for all officers. So I'd encourage you to think about kind of the things we talked about at the top of the presentation, the importance of communication and the 7 C's, and you can find a way to kind of implement that and be sure your role is as accessible as possible. So there's a QR code to a one-pager, which can help you kind of explain your position. I encourage, or to learn a little bit more about your position. So I'd encourage you to scan that QR code as well if you haven't already. I'll leave that up for a few more seconds and I'll pass it off, I believe, to Jack for our next section.
All right, thanks, Chris. So in this next section, we're going to talk about a couple different more tips and tricks and things to keep in mind to not just make your individual communications that you might be putting together a little bit more effective, but also trying to be a little bit more methodical and intentional about how we, not just in your individual role, but the chapter as a whole, can really be intentional about communicating with all the different people that you need to be communicating with and just helping people have the information that they need. So, Chris, you can hit the next slide. So first thing that we want to talk about here, and if you were on any of the other chop shops so far, you've probably seen this as well. But talking again about striving for your highest. So just some foundational things to keep in mind as you're getting used to your role. It is really helpful for not just you, but for every member of your chapter to have a very clear understanding of what it is that you're supposed to be doing, not just in your role itself, but perhaps some other additional responsibilities. And specifically when it comes to communication, trying to be clear about who owns what, who gets support from who, just like Chris talked through in his last section. But just making sure that everyone has an understanding of what they are supposed to be doing. And so some things that you can do to help get yourself up to speed is take a look at some of the key chapter documents or transition documents that you've gotten from your predecessor. So trying to think through or review what this person in my role has done before and see then what has worked from there, just using that as a base. Looking at expectations that your chapter might set on how we communicate or how we keep people accountable. We're going to talk about this a little bit more too, but think through some self-care techniques as well. Social media in particular, if you are very involved with that, can get very out of hand very quickly and can be tough to keep up with. So making sure that you're trying to delegate, you're trying to just spread all the work around for communication, because again, it's not just something that is owned by one person, but it's something owned by all of these different roles and everybody in the chapter that we've talked about so far. And of course, just in general, just aside from being a communicator, just setting boundaries to protect yourself from burnout. I've been told multiple times in Kappa Kappa Psi that it should be no more than like your 4th priority. Because again, we're all people first, we're all students first, we all have our families and friends first, and then perhaps we have Kappa Kappa Psi. So just keeping those priorities in mind, I think will be very helpful to set some boundaries for you as you go throughout this year. All right, Chris, we can go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about strategic planning more specifically with any comms roles, but just knowing that every single chapter should have a broader plan for the year, a broader vision for the year. And again, we talked about this as well with all the other roles, but understanding what your chapter is trying to do and accomplish this year is a good starting point to then know where you might need to fit in with communications. So, for instance, if we're trying to increase fundraisers is a huge goal of ours. Okay, how can we be intentional about marketing our fundraisers in a more intentional way and reaching a broader audience? Just an example to how to fit in with perhaps a communications role. Then refer back to missions and purposes. Again, everything that we're doing as a chapter should all align with just who we are as brothers and what we are, or what Kappa Kappa Psi is and is for. And of course, just have some time to reflect and adjust your plans as you go throughout the year. If you find something that's working, keep going with it. If it's not working, find ways to adjust. Okay. Chris, we can go to the next slide. One more specific tip to actually make your communications perhaps a little more engaging, especially on social media, is take a look at developing some graphic design skills. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to be a graphic design major, but try to use a very friendly tool or user-friendly tool like Canva to just create content that can help you convey your message a little more easily. Then if you're being very active on social media, you can schedule posts so you don't have to be constantly on it. You can schedule a few ahead of time. Another tip here, just if you have people in your chapter that are very good at certain things, or are very passionate about certain things, try to get them to either brainstorm new ideas or to review the things that you're doing or to take ownership of something else. As we're going back to talking about burnout, feel free to delegate to other people who may be very passionate about a certain communication that you're putting out there. And lastly here, always keep in mind that you have to use certain brand standards when putting things Kappa Kappa Psi out there. So go through the chapter resource folder to get specific logos and crests and other standard fonts and formats to then build things off of. All right, Chris, we can go to the next. So a lot of our next slides here are going to talk a little bit more about planning communications. And so one of the things that's very helpful is to really think ahead about when we need to share information, who needs to share it, and who's also the best person to distribute that information. So just thinking through, okay, our chapter probably put together a calendar for the entire year of the different things that we're doing. Trying to then think through a little bit more of, okay, when do we need to start engaging about this certain project or event? When do we need to follow up on it? Do we need to share a thank you? Do we need to have different social media campaigns going throughout the year? Just having a more methodical way to just plan out and track all of your information will be very helpful to actually enact it throughout the year, and also trying to avoid over communicating as well. If you have a couple different people in the chapter who are all using the social media account, just having a schedule to just cadence out different communications will be helpful so they're not all compiling on one day. One of the main things that we also need to think through is who really are our audiences, both within our chapter and also outside of it. So are we trying to engage with alumni? Are we trying to engage with the full band program? Are we trying to reach out to the community in some way? So thinking backwards from that about then how we need to communicate will be very helpful as well. Chris, can you go to the next slide? And again, timing is key. Having a view further ahead of when all these communications will need to go out will be very helpful for a lot of different things. Again, using a chapter calendar to track all these events and track communications leading up to it will help you just map out what you need to do through different times throughout the year and give you time to just delegate and get reviews from various people, including the sponsor and DOB. Next slide, please. We don't need to spend much time here, but just knowing that, again, if you have a content calendar, again, it's helpful to know when different things are going to be coming down. Okay. So another bit here, thinking through the different channels for certain different communications is helpful as well. And this goes back to our audience as well. If we need to engage with perhaps the band or a marching band, we can use the marching band, whatever channels they use to communicate with each other. You can use the social media accounts. If you need to communicate with the broader audience on a more formal invite, for the formal invite to first degree for alumni, for instance, then perhaps you use just more of a just email to keep it a little more straightforward. But just thinking through again how you are communicating with others, what's the best channel to use. And I'd also want to keep in mind, like, do we need to store any of these records for next year? Because I'm sure your successor will be very welcome to seeing the things that you did, and then just using that as a baseline to just keep building on it and keep going. Next slide, please. Again, as we've talked a little bit already, delegation collaboration is going to be huge for any comms role. I'd encourage you to lean on brothers, perhaps if you have people within a committee or perhaps any chairs within your chapter, to lean on them to develop and review content that's getting put out there. Because again, it could very easily become a lot of content that if it's all just on one person, will get very overwhelming. So again, if you just need a review, if you need inspiration, if you need people to just put pen to paper and draft some things, again, just engage the people around you and try to get their support. Next slide. But one thing to keep in mind here as you are working with other people, just knowing that there is a distinction between working in personal relationships. It's a line that can easily get crossed. But just knowing that if you can focus on building trust with the people around you and giving more praise than you give criticism, making sure that people feel heard, it'll help a long way in going to just make sure that these conflicts don't affect anything else besides just trying to get something done, which should be good. One more slide here, two more slides here. And lastly, try to think bigger than just, I need to write this specific social media post. I'd encourage everyone to be very intentional and think a little bit more holistically about how we as an entire chapter are engaging our people both internally and our external audiences as well. And thinking through what's the exact purpose of what we're trying to put out there. And if you can really articulate what's our target outcome, who is our audience, those two things together will help you cascade a lot more information throughout it. That gives us a lot of information on what the content needs. It tells us how we need to communicate. It tells us what the channel should be. It also tells us when we need to be doing things if we can align with our chapter calendars. And so thinking beyond just a specific email or social media post to the broader chapter can really help engage our audiences more holistically than just thinking on one-off things. And Chris, I think there should be one more if it updated. No, it did not update. Let me steal screen real quick. Sorry. I added a slide last minute. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay. So I put in a sample communications plan here. Again, not meant to be an end all be all, just threw a few things in here. But again, trying to be methodical and planning ahead for all the things that we need to be doing. Thinking through, okay, what are the specific items that we do need to get out? What's the end goal? What's our purpose? Are there any of the key points or content that we need to pull into it? Who are these things going to? What channel are they going to? Who's drafting it or owning it? Do we need to get a review from somebody else, just from a peer review, or do we need our sponsor or DOB to look at it? Who's the actual best person to distribute it as well? And just keeping track of like when that needs to go out and what the status is. So this is just a simple example of a communications plan that could help keep you organized. Again, just an example. Find what works for your chapter. There's no one best solution here, but just again, I encourage you all to have some form of just keeping track of all the different things that you need to be doing. And if you can be organized and methodical, again, it will just help keep everybody on track and keep communications flowing. Happy to talk about this more. I write comms plans for a living, at least part of my job. So happy to go through this more in depth, but just wanted to show like a holistic or a easy view of where people can start just thinking through it all. All right. Without any further ado, passing to Paula. You are on mute.
Oh, so
It
sad.
got both
It's
of us. I feel
it's
better
like I've
now.
never used Zoom before. So now that I'm unmuted, thank you guys. You guys did an awesome job. I know you guys got a lot of information kind of thrown at you. So kind of bear with us. We're almost there. So with all of that information on what you can be posting, what you can be using in your respective roles, because I loved that as I was going through the chat, I saw a wide variety of roles. So I saw a lot of recording secretaries, a lot of corresponding secretaries, some historians, some alumni relations. So there's a lot of different fraternity resources already out there for you. So we don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel here. Well, there's already so much out there. So, some things that we can take a look at is with our national brand. So, this is ways that no matter what position you have in the fraternity, you're able to connect to many of the things that we're already doing. So, if depending on your level of position and kind of what your position revolves around, there's things that you and your chapter can do to engage with our national brand. So, that includes participating in our months of service, musicianship, leadership, brotherhood, and celebration. So a lot of that, yes, it does have to do with many things being posted on social media, but depending on your level of your position, such as if you're a service chair, you can, or if you're working with a service chair, you can come up with different events to host in the month of September. Hint, hint, that is right around the corner. So maybe start working with your service chair or whatever position that is in your chapter on that. And same for like the month of celebration in June. That would be a way that you can collaborate with maybe your alumni relations um officer. So that would be again a place where you could celebrate your most recent graduates. So again, thinking about how you can really collaborate with your fellow officers on many of the things that are already in place. Other things that you guys can do, whether it's as a chapter or even just individually, is pursue the level 1 and level 2 of the Founder Circle certification. So we'll touch more on that towards the end of this presentation. You can engage in the AEA way. So thinking about how you and your chapter are continuing to strive for the highest. You can recognize yourself as you accomplish the Crown Pearl goals. So as it was touched upon earlier on in the presentation, many of the Crown Pearl goals are things that you and your chapter are already doing to begin with. So just highlighting those things, even doing a continuous check back of where are we at in those Crown Pearl goals, what are some things that we are planning moving forward that we can accomplish, and then using social media to engage with other chapters and your district council. So even if you're a district councilor right now, because I know we have a couple of council members on this call, which is very exciting, you can use your social media and your brand to connect with other chapters in your district and throughout the fraternity as well. So you can also connect with other people that hold a similar position, maybe in other districts. So using this to really connect with others is a great starting point. So taking a look at our fall activity report that is coming up, that's going to be right around the corner. So when we're looking at your fall activity report, so this information covers all of your things that are being accomplished from the months of May 1st to November 1st. So you want to think about, so what things are you already doing? And one of the things that's really helped me when I was filling this out as chapter president was going through our social media of seeing like, okay, what did we do for this month or for this event and this event? And am I missing anything? Sometimes those small things that maybe you forgot about, like maybe it was just a simple like t-shirt making party that you guys had with your brothers, or a fellowship event where you just went out to dinner or went out to get ice cream, or one of those study dates. Sometimes even those small little things can be forgotten. So using social media to really help when it comes to filling out your fall activity report can be huge. And that's a great way to help with your president on taking just one thing off their plate, just lessening the load just a little bit. So similar to working on your fall activity report, again, I recommend collaborating with your chapter president and seeing what else you can do to help them fill this out. Um, and this will again help them become more successful and also help you learn a little bit more about other positions as well. So again, ideally we want to have the fall activity report completed by December 1st, or before December 1st. So ideally we would like for them to be submitted before Thanksgiving break, because that gives your DOB and sponsor enough time, because we know during that time of year, the holiday season's a pretty busy time of year. So the sooner the better that you can get those finished, and collaborating with other positions would be excellent. If you need some help with, or if your chapter president needs some help with that, we do have some officer training videos on how to complete the Opus training as well for that. So we will post that link in the chat if anyone needs additional assistance. So similar to the fall activity report, the spring activity report is very similar. So this will encompass events from November 1st to May 1st. So again, the second half of the year, again, very similar to the fall activity report. It will also include specific demographics about each band ensemble. So if you need information on that, that might be something you need to collaborate with your band director or sponsor if they work in your music department as well to help get that information. So very similar. Again, this report looks pretty similar if you have filled this out. This is due June 1st. So again, you might need to submit this probably before the end of finals week. So maybe by the end of April, beginning of May. So again, your DOB and sponsor have enough time to go through that approval process. A lot of times the spring activity report is used to determine eligibility for different district and national recognitions as well. So again, that's just something that chapters have to do anyways. So helping to be proactive and helping to get on top of things would be a great resource to use as that communicator. Again, whether you're the corresponding secretary, the recording secretary, the historian, the parliamentarian, I saw somebody mention that in the chat as well. Kind of no matter what your role is, you can help with these awards as well. So in addition to those reports, some things where this can all kind of come together is our founder circle. So our founder circle we're going to post a link that has some information in here. So this is really our kind of leadership development series. So there's 3 different levels of training that you can complete. So you can complete the individual level, the group level, and the visionary level. I personally have completed the individual level last spring. It was really fun, and it was really interesting to actually go back and kind of reflect on things, even now as an alumni, just to kind of look back and see like how maybe my leadership vision has changed now that I'm an adult and now that I'm an alumni versus maybe things when I was an active member. So each module, there's about 5 to 6 modules for each level. And in there's a lot of really interesting readings. And it doesn't just apply to your band life, it also applies a lot to your outside life. And even no matter what your career path is, I think many students are able to relate to the leadership lessons that are included in there. So in there's also independent reading and reflections. And this program is also being paired with things at district and national conventions. So you may have attended one of our Founders Circle workshops presented by many of our Founders Circle speakers at National Convention if you attended that. And upcoming this spring, there will also be some Founders Circle speakers at each of the district conventions as well, along with a keynote speaker. So again, this information is great to use no matter what level of communicator you are. So you're able to use this to help guide group discussions with your brothers. Even if not everyone in your chapter is going to be completing this individual or group or visionary leadership levels, it would still be something great that you can even pull just different resources, and you can use that to help kind of have those conversations maybe at your chapter meetings, just to kind of do some of those reflections. And that would even be a great piece that you can collaborate with your vice presidents for membership on, maybe even a CMEP on something leadership related. So again, just kind of keep this in mind that there's tons of great resources in there that can help you kind of bridge everything together. And then the last thing that we have is our chapter resources folder. So all of this information when it comes to officer trainings, having all of those links that Kristen has generously posted in the chat over and over. All of those things are there to help you guys be successful in your positions. Again, I know that there's kind of a wide variety of positions on here tonight, and that's kind of the cool thing that kind of makes this call a little bit unique and different. But in the chapter resources folder, there's so many things that you are able to use in order to be successful in your positions. So I would strongly encourage you to spend some time just taking a look through this folder, because you might find something that you've maybe never seen before that could be like transformational when it comes to your position. So this information includes things on being engaged at the district and national levels, aligning with our national brand. So again, focusing back on some of those lessons and workshops that we talked about earlier on in this presentation. Not only this training, but all the other officer trainings and the slideshows that we're going through right now are going to be included on there. And overall, just fostering wellness in your chapters. We'll have some great information on here. So if you want to include, or if you want to scan the QR code, I believe Kristen also posted the URL, I was going to say the chat for this, the URL in the chat for the chapter resources folder. It's a lot of C's all in the same sentence, so I do apologize. But with that being said, we are going to kind of transition into the end of this presentation. So again, we thank you all for being here tonight. We are going to do some Q&A after this, but I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen to kind of wrap up this part of the workshop.
Great. Thanks so much, Paula, Jack, Chris. This was a really great presentation, so very grateful to all three of you. Everyone, if you have questions as you kind of move through the year, please feel free to reach out to us at leadershipdevelopment@kksci.org. We want to hear if you're having challenges and you need somebody to talk to about them, but also if things are going well. We want to hear that too. What are the successes that you're having throughout the year? I also want to encourage you to reach out to our chapter field representatives, Ari and Mason, and I'll put their email in the chat as well. They are paid by our organization to help support you all as active brothers. They're getting ready to release their travel schedule soon, so they're going to get on the road to meet some of you in person. But I just always encourage you to also, leverage our chapter field representatives as a resource as well. We are closing out the month of August with our final Chop Shop on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Hoping to see some of you, but if not you, another brother from your chapter who is thinking about service. And we'll have another great presentation and Q&A session. So with that, I'm going to turn off the recording. We're going to stop sharing, and this time is yours. Ask us the questions that are on your mind. If you want ideas about something, use it as you see fit.